The people in AUB claim to be the chosen, the only ones on earth who are living all of God's laws. And that's why they think that they have the priesthood, the one and only priesthood that was set up by Joseph Smith. However, 3 of their counselors, their apostles, high priest apostles, have been drummed out of the group for allegedly molesting their daughters. One was Joe Thompson. He was drummed out on a priesthood court, but there was never enough evidence that they could bring it before the Attorney General or the state. He wasn't prosecuted. Then there was George Maycock. He was drummed out. And I saw George in the grocery store, and this was after I had left. And I said, "Hey, George, is what I hear about you true?" And he says, "Yes, it's all true." And he says, "Okay," and he went off on his own. And then there was Chevro Palacio, a Mexican fellow. And I've investigated every sex crime that you can imagine. But what this man was doing with his grandchildren and his wife was just totally despicable. But at least he did have the gumptions not to deny it. He admitted it. He was arrested and he was sent to prison. I'm sure he spent 5 years. I don't know if he's still down there or not. But here's 3 men supposedly chosen by God who have been accused and drummed out of the group for allegedly molesting their daughters. What happened? What God was it that helped choose them? You know, they're supposed to be chosen through inspiration. But this goes to show you that there is a sex problem in every single one of these fundamentalist groups, because even though they differ in who has the authority, it's the revelation 1:132 which they all have in common, and they take from that what they want. And well, see, I've studied this very thoroughly, both from a moral and from a law enforcement point of view. When Mitchell kidnapped Elizabeth Smart, he did not sin within the concept of Mormon fundamentalism, because there's only one rule, and that is you must be a polygamist. It doesn't say how. It doesn't give you any directions on how to go about it, only that you have to be a polygamist. Now, we know that he tried to get a plural wife through conventional means. He contacted the gal from the Kingston's group who was trying to seduce her. So, in order to live a greater law, he had to break a lower law. So, you know, he didn't sin. And then I found it interesting that the media did not play up the fact that he was a fundamentalist, a Mormon fundamentalist. They just played the fact that he was just an ordinary sex offender, kidnapper. But he was a product of Mormon fundamentalism. All of his history, all of the writings and everything. He had his own version, but he was a Mormon fundamentalist. So, you know, and you can go back to Ervil LeBaron, a mass murderer, and even before that, Ron and Dan Lafferty. And when I was writing for the Event News Weekly, a weekly newspaper, I got an interview. Jack Ford was the PR guy, and of course I knew him from law enforcement. He set me up with an interview with Dan Lafferty. I interviewed him before Krakauer did his book, and I've got pictures and letters and stuff from Dan that somebody might find interesting, that they could use. It doesn't matter which group it is. Some will claim to be more moral and more righteous than the other groups, but you can find the same foibles in all of them, and it all boils down to sex and the pursuit of sex. Do you have another question?
Yes, I'd like you to explain to our listening audience how they finance all of these families.
Well, When I found out that Owen Allred was involved in the theft of the $1.5 million from Virginia Hill, I went up and interviewed him, and at that time he was in charge of the finances of AUB. He was the treasurer and had the checkbook. And when Llewellyn Allred, his older brother, was alive, he made Owen, give Owen that position, so nobody could say that Llewellyn was manipulating the books or anything like that. Owen took me into showed me where the money was stashed in his wife's closet, and then he took me in his another bedroom, and he opened up a drawer in the dresser, and he pulled out 5 or 6 gold cougarons, gold coins. And he says, "You know, John," he says, "people just hand me this money, no strings attached, and just out of the clear blue sky." And I was wondering if he was leading up to try and bribe me to drop this investigation or something, but he didn't do it. But yeah, here he had these coins, probably $1,000 worth of gold coins, and were they tithing or were they personal gifts of Owen, and what were they doing in his closet, you know, in his drawer? I didn't push it because I didn't want to alienate him. I wanted information. But after I got involved in AUB, I was tipped off by some people, and they would say, "John, when you pay your tithing, pay it with a check. Don't pay it with cash, because if you give it to one of the counselors, it'll never make it to the coffers. They just pocket it." And that reputation has always been there. There was a guy that I befriended, and I can't think of his name offhand, but he got all involved in joining AUB, and he had some money, and he gave $10,000 to the bishop up at Pinesdale to build a silo and to buy wheat for all of the people up there. And he came back a few weeks later, and he asked the bishop, he says, "Did you get the wheat and to get the silo built?" And he says, "No. So-and-so, the counselor up there, heard about the money, and he came and said, I have a better use for the money than that." And so he took it, and we don't know what happened to it. Now, if you make a donation and you stipulate how it's to be used, and it's not used for that stipulation, it's a crime. And I told this fellow, "Do you want to charge him with a crime? Let's investigate it." And he says, "No, because I believe Brother Owen has the keys and I don't want to cause any trouble." I don't know how many people, after I got involved in the Virginia Hill case, would come to me and they would tell me about how they were built out of money, scammed out of money and everything, and I'd say, "All right, I'll help you build a case, and we'll go to law enforcement and we'll see what we can do." "No, I believe Brother Owen's got the keys and I just don't want to cause him any trouble." This is the way they get away with it. A lot of that tithing doesn't really go to tithing, but millions of dollars do. During the Virginia Hill case, the defense submitted statistics on the tithing that they had received for a 10-year period, and it all averaged around $1 million a year that they were receiving. Now, this doesn't account for property that they give. A lot of people donate property and quit claim it over to the priesthood, and they never seen it again. This one fellow told me he had 5 acres in around Panguitch in a resort area around the lake, and he deeded it over to AUB because he was told that it would be under protection. If he ever wanted it again, he could have it. Well, he thought that he still had access to the property, went down there, and one of the priesthood guys kicked him off, told him if he trespassed again, he would have him arrested, you know. And I don't know how many stories I could tell you like this, and AUB is supposed to be the most honest and the upstanding and righteous group of all.
Don't they have whole town areas that are all owned by the AUB? That are all
Yes.
all the properties owned by the AUB.
Yes, this is another problem. And what they did is they studied the Unified Effort Plan in the FLDS, where the Unified Effort Plan owned all of the property, like in Hillsdale and Colorado City. So the priesthood had property in Rocky Ridge in Joab County, and also up in Pinesdale, Montana, that they owned, and so they wanted to protect it. So they come up with a
Isn't Rocky Ridge is in this valley, is it not?
No,
I realize that they owned Granite Ranch, and was it Greenhaven, or Tom Green had Greenhaven?
yeah, Tom
in
had
Joab
that
County.
was Tom's 10. He had 10
Yeah.
acres there at Greenhaven. I'm sure he's lost it by now, but Rocky Ridge is an incorporated city in Joab County.
Wow,
It's
okay.
just this. It's by Santaquin,
Okay.
between Santaquin and Nephi.
Okay, now
Now, they come up with a nonprofit corporation called the Communities of Apostolic United Brethren. And in it, in the bylaws, they come up with an occupancy agreement. And all of the people who were allowed to build on this property were told that they had to fill out or sign this occupancy agreement. And the occupancy agreement said, in essence, that if at any time you are found out of favor with the bishop, you can be evicted from the property, either with or without being reimbursed for the improvements. In other words, these people would take their life savings, build a house on the property, whether it's in Harvest Haven, another group that they had, or up in Pinesdale or whatever, and if they wanted to get rid of them, all they had to do was say, "Hey, you're out of favor. You're an apostate. You're no longer, worthwhile," and kick them off the property. As soon as I found out about it, I circulated as best I could among all of the people, because they were going around getting their signature, and I was cautioning them not to sign. And there was a few people who didn't sign as a result of it. Now, I think you could probably take it to court. What would happen would be a different thing. But this is a way of compelling people, of intimidating people to become dependent upon the priesthood. I have a tape recording that was furnished me by a member, and Owen Allred gave a talk at a priesthood meeting in a little community called Mataqua, which is near the DI Ranch down in southern Utah. It's the property that they own. And in it, he says, if you want to show your appreciation to the priesthood, do it with your pocketbook. That's the way you show the appreciation to the priesthood. They have to have money, all kinds of money. The Granite Ranch was supposed to be self-sufficient, but Joe Thompson told me that while he was on the council, that $10,000 a month went out there to subsidize the ranch. They had the finest ranch in all of Snake Valley, and all the people around couldn't understand where they got the money to get all their irrigation systems and build all their houses and stuff. Well, where they got it from is their converts. It's the converts, it's the tithing money, and it's a multi-million-dollar business. Excuse me.
I was going to ask you about the mathematics of percentages, approximate percentages of the plural wives or the children are supported by tax dollars.
Or do you mean tithing
AFDC, no, tax dollars.
By tax dollars? Oh.
Tax dollars. Aid for dependent children, SSI for retarded or handicapped children,
Well,
schools.
in Tom Green's case, it was almost 100%.
Yes.
And it's hard to tell with a lot of the independents, because there's probably, they say there's 1,000 independents here in the Intermountain West. So there's probably 70 or 80 families. the fundamentalists I have found always like to embellish and make it sound like there's many more of them than there really is. And so when they say, you know, we got 7,000 people in our group, I think that they have a tendency to count the dogs, the goats, and a couple of horses and things of that nature. That's a hard, you just have to make an educated guess.